Hello everyone here at TUM, and also to those joining us online today from our partner universities across Europe. Welcome to the TUM Speaker Series. My name is Jan and I'll be guiding you through today's event as part of EU Week. Today we are pleased to welcome Commissioner Jessika Roswall. She's responsible for environment, water resilience and a competitive circular economy. Before we start, just a little note, we will have a Q&A format at the end of this session. Today you will have the opportunity to ask your questions directly to Commissioner Roswall. Therefore we will walk around, give you a microphone. To allow as many questions as possible, please keep it also as short as possible. Before Commissioner Roswall delivers the keynote, we will hear a few welcoming words from TUM representative Professor Peuys, and followed by EU Week organizer, Professor Henkel. With that, I will hand over to Professor Peuys. Thank you.
Good afternoon, dear students, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the Technical University of Munich, especially to such an important topic. It is my great pleasure to officially welcome our distinguished guest today, Commissioner Jessika Roswall. She speaks on a topic that is important to all of us, and I think we experience on a daily basis how important it is now that we are shocked by rising gas prices almost on a daily basis. And we see, I think on a daily basis, how important sustainability, potentially circularity, could be if we already had it. So it is a great pleasure to have so many of you here and even more online to speak about this topic, and I know you have the opportunity later on to ask questions. So I think this question of how Europe protects its environment and how Europe can build a competitive circular economy is of great relevance to all of us individually and certainly also at the economic scale. So Commissioner Roswall's work reminds us that sustainability is not a burden, but rather an opportunity if we use it and if we use it wisely and shape it together. I think for you, the students, it is of great relevance, yes, from a consumer perspective, but also from a careers perspective. It doesn't matter if you're in engineering and management, in the natural sciences. I think it is potentially your avenue to the future. You have the possibility to create organizations, create tools, create potentially machines that help shape Europe's circular economy and therefore build a new competitive advantage. And I think I don't have to comment on daily news why that might be more important than ever and why potentially we as Europeans are on the one hand more challenged than ever, but on the other hand, I personally feel that the case for Europe is so much clearer even than it was before. Why we as Europe, as the European Union, must work together, because we certainly have much to lose if we don't. And from a competitive advantage kind of view, if we shape our economy together, we can be really shaping the future in a way that's sustainable. Many of you attended the TUM Sustainability Day just last week, in which so many projects of you guys, of students, were showcased, building machines for the future, finding new sources of energy, and at the end of the day, contributing what I think the Commissioner might talk about, that is how we can build a sustainable, how can we build a circular economy, a circular future that will be beneficial to all of us and the prosperity of the economy and of society overall. So I'm super happy that this is taking place today in a moment when we're reminded of what happens if we don't work together, if we only rely on fossil fuels. I think, well, we experience that on a daily basis, and we potentially, maybe you would join in with me on a daily basis. I think had we only started a different path early on and maybe with more force. But we're not here to lament the past, but rather to look into the future and how we can shape it together. So with that, before handing over to our Commissioner, Jessika Roswall, I do want to thank you, want to thank the team of the TUM Speaker Series for organizing this so perfectly, as always. I do want to thank the Dean of the TUM School of Management, Christoph Kaser, and my dear colleague Joachim Henkel, who is the Spiritus Rector of the EU Week, and we just had a short exchange. I think we both agree that we need Europe more than ever, and let's shape it together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claudia. Dear Commissioner Roswall, dear Claudia, dear Christoph, our Dean of School of Management, dear students, dear guests. It's a great pleasure for me to also say a few brief words of welcome and also explain a little bit why we're doing this here. And can I have slides, please? Because I'm a management professor, so I need slides. So here, this is briefly why we're doing this. We're doing this since 2017, annually, because 2016 was the vote for Brexit, and we were shocked. We thought, hey, this is unreal. They're dumping something extremely useful. And this is the answer here, why we're doing this. Right now, by the way, with 10 universities in 10 different countries in Europe. On Wednesday morning, I'll fly to Warsaw, where we have, with 6 of these universities, a joint teaching program, a BIP, blended intensive program, sponsored and made possible by the EU. So we want to celebrate the European Union, but also inform students, the broader public about the EU, because there's so much that we don't know, and I include myself. It's a complicated but also well thought through thing we should know more about. Can we have one more? So that was Brexit, and we thought, hey, this is unreal. We should do something here. Can I have one more? And the irony of that thing is that the young people in the UK were very clearly for the EU. So in the youngest age group, 73 for Remain, 40 only in the oldest age group. The problem was, click please, participation. Participation was much higher among the old people, and overall that led to just narrow vote for Brexit. But it's all the old people who decided about the future of the young people. And this is why in particular for the young people, you guys and your peers, it's important to understand better what these people are doing in Brussels and all over that continent. Can I have one more? This is why it's important to learn more about Europe. And finally, also a brief word about our topic today. The European Union enables us to overcome, well, external effects, right? So if you are from TUM School of Management, you've heard hopefully about that. Externalities like environmental questions. It's like, if I pollute, it doesn't harm me too much because much of that goes to my neighbors. But if everybody pollutes, everybody suffers. This is why we need coordination, and that's where one of the sweet spots of the EU, and this is exactly your area. And with that, I hand over and I invite everyone to learn, and I thank you again for being here. The floor is yours.
I think I have a lot of mics on me, actually. So thank you very much, Professor Poes. I'm Swedish, and Henkel, Professor Henkel. Thank you, and very much looking forward to have a discussion with you. And I'm here to talk about my topic, but I cannot not mention that at the moment, in the geopolitical context that we are, I totally agree with both of you. And at the moment, more countries want to be a member of the European Union. So this is really important for me. Ladies and gentlemen, at its very core, the European project is about securing peace and prosperity through collaboration. Einigkeit macht stark. That is the principle that guides our work. And it is an urgent call to action to today's world. The greatest challenges that we face now, the EU, that is conflicts, to climate change, to competitiveness, all these challenges are, as said, shared ones. And we can only overcome these challenges together. So that's why I'm very happy to kick off the European Union Week here at TUM. I know also that for almost 160 years, not only the last 10 years, the Technical University of Munich has been at the very forefront of the scientific discovery of Europe and has also providing young people with science and engineering skills that society so desperately needs. And this is very important for me as a Swede to say. Also 19 Nobel Prize laureates has walked through these halls. And along also, of course, with tens of thousands of students determined to solve the world's problem. And countless startups have grown out of these institutions, delivering innovation to the society. And this is exactly the type of creative problem solves that we want, that is determined, that is engaged, and innovative young people that are committed to a better future. I will start with delivering myself some facts. Vibrant ecosystems, healthy soils, clean water and air, these are the building blocks of a competitive and resilient economy. You maybe know this, but I did not for a couple of, well, 1.5 years ago actually. 3 out of 4 European businesses relies heavily on one or more ecosystem service. That shows that we cannot separate environmental actions from economic policies. And today I really want to discuss the policy area that links very much between exactly that, is the environment and the economic opportunities, and that is the circular economy. Our ecosystems are struggling, you know that. Our water cycle are struggling, it is broken. We have real wars, we have trade wars, we have resource scarcity, and we have climate change that are threatening our economies, our competitiveness, energy and green transition, also our security and many other things. All these events shows exactly the high exposure that we in the EU are, how vulnerable we are when it comes to supply chain. And this also shows how dependent we are on other countries for critical raw materials, and also how quick geopolitical conflicts can spill over into our economy. And of course, when that happens, that of course hits us hard. We have seen it, we see it every day. Energy and material prices are rising. Production costs are increasing. Pressure on our households and on our businesses are intensified. And Europe is again reminded that dependence that comes with a cost. And that is why the circular economy matters so much, not only because it helps us to reduce waste, but also because it helps us to reduce this vulnerability. It also, of course, helps us to use the materials that we need more efficiently, and that itself, of course, decrease the pressure on our ecosystems. So, but finally, it helps us to build on a, now I hear myself, okay, build a stronger economic base in Europe. I would say this, that the circular transition we are into, that is not only an environmental choice, it has become an economic necessity. And we in the European Union, together with the member states, are taking concrete steps to speed up that transition. Last year, we did take some first action when it comes to plastic recyclers, how we can support them. We're also building solutions, building a market for bio-based solutions. For example, just taking one example, now actually two, how we can turn organic waste into packaging, how we can turn organic waste into energy and also to fertilizers. We're also working hard to deliver, and this is important for me to say in this room, how we can change the mindset when it comes to water and circularity. I would say this, that we too often, when it comes to water and circularity, we still approach these two subjects separately and not as combined policy domains. However, water is not only a resource that we have within the circular economy, it's also a medium through which circularity so often is happening. So that's why we need to talk about it together. At the same time, circular solutions from material recovery to energy efficiency also directly shape how water is used, how water is treated and reused. Water resilience strategy is our answer. We put that strategy on the table last year. And the water resilience strategy has exactly that as at its core principle. And there is no circularity without water resilience, and neither there is no water resilience without circularity. So one of my overarching priorities for this year, now we've done the water resilience strategy last year, this year we will do the Circular Economy Act. And at this time, we are actually finalizing the preparations. I will talk a lot about that, but just overarching, I will say we want, with the Circular Economy Act, strengthen the single market for secondary raw materials, and the other thing is to address the bottlenecks when it comes to the supply and the demand side. I think it was said already, for businesses, circularity comes as a huge opportunity. Just more figures, recent studies suggest that if we add on circular practices, that could cut metal use for EU manufacturers with 10%. It would cut electricity by 7% and also cut fossil fuels by 6%. But it can also open revenue streams and increase the resilience against the global shocks that we see now coming over and over again. But of course, if we really want companies to invest in circularity, then we need better market conditions. We simply said needs to get the economic rights, and we need to strengthen the business case for circularity. So I would say that the Circular Economy Act is about market building, and it's about giving the investors and the companies the stability and the predictability, especially in this unstable world. The wider potential to recover vital resources and to reduce our need to import them, I would say, and everybody hopefully agree with me, is enormous. Just more figures. Today, less than 40% of the electronic waste is collected, less than 40%, and only 30% of that 40% is recycled. That means that we are leaving hundreds of thousands of tons of critical raw materials behind. For example, and this I had to read several times before I understood it, but I'm on a TUM, you should probably get it directly. I'm a lawyer, so that's probably the answer. 1 metric ton of smartphone components can provide recyclers with the amount of gold and copper typically extracted from 2,000 tons of mined rock. And material recovery from batteries could supply half of the EU's total demand by 2040. And also, another thing that I started my discussion today with is on phosphorus. A vital, as you know, probably a vital component when it comes to fertilizers that can be recovered from wastewater. And in fact, I was in Germany I've been very many times in Germany, but anyway, I visited a phosphorus recovery plant here in Germany that actually could meet more than 40% of our current agriculture demand. And this is a topic, you probably know, is a topic that we discuss very much in the college, in the European Commission at the moment. I would say European companies, and many of them here from Germany, are leading the circular innovation. I will mention some. Traceless, maybe some of you know that, it's from Hamburg. It is creating entirely compostable packaging without plastic. Another creative startups are recycling ocean plastic into furniture. And here in Bavaria, BMW is pioneering a closed loop system for electrical vehicle batteries. And a few months ago, I visited Germany's first lithium recycling plant. Okay, you don't hear me. Sorry.
Try like this.
It's off. Then I may switch it on. Perfect. So you missed my very good speech. I'm sorry. But now we hear you even better. Now it's even better. Anyway, a few months ago, I visited Germany's first lithium recycling plant. My last example from innovative is made of air. TUM startup of ecosystem is turning bio-waste into engineering biocarbon ready for industrial use. So, European businesses are also driving the innovation in the water sector. As I have many legs, but water, as I said, and they need to be working together. And here I would say that it's a huge opportunity for growth. And European digital water market is on track to double its size to about 23 billion euros by 2033. And we are also putting forward a digital strategy for the water sector, and I think that, the plan is that that would guide the growth and enhance water efficiency at the same time. I'm coming to an end, I promise. The EU has shown, I would say, with my examples, but also from your experience probably, that we can combine environmental leadership with economic vision. Ambitious rules have delivered cleaner, and this is true for today, even though we have a challenge to go. But our rules, ambition rules on water, have delivered cleaner water. It has delivered cleaner air, and also more renewable energy. We have lowered our emissions, and we have done a lot of other things. Beyond the obvious environmental and health benefits, we also can deliver the powerful economic advantage with this ambition. I would conclude with this, because it's important to say it's not only environmental and economic security, it is also about economic resilience. And I would say that this is very, very obvious in this challenging time that we're living today. And the circular economy is a really important part of that journey. Of course, the transition to circularity will demand legislation that we are doing in the Circular Economy Act, but it's not the only thing. It also will depend on collaboration. And here I would say that you play a very important part in this. As students, scientists, and policymakers, businesses, you will lead the way forward toward tomorrow. So I really am happy that you are here. I wish you a really interesting week, and I'm really looking forward to your questions from all of you. So thank you very much for listening, or whatever you heard from my speech then. I hold on to this then.
Yeah, I think now we have to share a microphone.
Oh, sorry.
No, I mean, sorry. Yeah, we have a little bit of technical issues, but this won't stop us, I think. So now you have already explained a lot of technical details.
Yes.
First of all, would you like something to drink?
I can fix. You can speak, and I'll pour water.
Oh, thank you. All right. So, yeah, this was very interesting. Many technical facts. Now, first looking a little bit maybe at you as a person also. So you are a lawyer by training and a politician by choice, and now you are kind of the guardian of the environment. So which of those three people shows up to work every day?
Well, it's a combination. I'm also grandmother.
True.
Thank you. No, but I think it's a mixture, of course. I mean, I'm happy to have I'm a lawyer. I mean, I think for me it's very important to have that. I'm also a mother of two, and I push them to go through university. I think that, of course, is important. But I'm sometimes also very happy that I have had a real work. I mean, don't tell this to my policy colleagues, of course, because. But it's something to fall back on, but also have some experience. But I'm very happy that I've been a politician in the Swedish Riksdag, in opposition, in majority. I think that has also learned me to become who I am. But I don't know, it's a very difficult question. It's very good for me. This is probably the wrong place to say it, but to be a politician and be a lawyer, have trained on reading legislative text a lot, of course, helps me every day. But then being a grandmother helps me to try to focus on the future, on why I'm doing this every day.
I think, yeah, we can see. I think that must have been a very good answer to the question. So you already stated that you moved from, basically being a politician in Sweden to being one at the EU. So was there anything that changed in your perspective from representing a member state to representing European interests as a whole?
No, definitely. I mean, because you, as a minister, of course, you represent your member state. And in Sweden, we also have a very sophisticated system that we go to, as a minister, go to the parliament before we go to council and get the majority. So it's a little bit, you really represent your country. Now I have taken an oath in Luxembourg saying that I represent all 450 million people. I mean, both I was very proud at that moment. But also, of course, that makes it different. Then, of course, the European Commission is a huge institution that is both fantastic, is helping me a lot, but it also creates some demand. I mean, every institution or business or industry that are big is also sometimes something takes some time, which, of course, for me as a person who is a little bit sometimes it goes too slow. That's maybe okay. But also I think that I don't want everything to go too fast neither, because fast and wrong is not good neither. But it's like, you know, bureaucrats, which I really appreciate, and they know so much good things that I need to know, but it takes time. And then democratic processes also take time, which we also is very happy for. We don't want to have anything else. But of course, sometimes I think we could move faster.
No, I lost my microphone. Yeah, today it's a little bit interesting. Yeah, it's for the stream. Sorry for the stream in this case. Okay, so back to our topic. For many people, I mean, now I want to talk a little bit about your role as a commissioner, because we think for many people this remains rather abstract, because we don't, or maybe they don't know what a commissioner really does. So if we followed you through a typical week, if that even exists, I don't, probably not, okay. But what does your week look like? Where do you spend most of your time?
Oh, that's a really terrible and good question. I mean, what is, I mean, every week on Wednesday at 9 o'clock we have college meeting. That's like a governmental meeting. I mean, all the commissioners under President von der Leyen, we meet every Wednesday, taking the decisions for that week. So that is always. But besides that, of course, it's very. I have a plan in my head on how a week should start. Now it's Monday. I should meet my cabinet members in Bellemo, where my office is. Obviously not, because I'm here. So you see, it's changing. But I would say, maybe if I may say what. I was a minister in Sweden. Of course, I did a lot of traveling, but what I did, and so I thought that I was prepared. I was not. I'm traveling a lot as a commissioner to promote what we are doing as this event, of course, but also to get, because I think that we are doing a lot of important regulation, but I think we need to be better also from a European perspective to communicate why we do things. So for me, it's important to do this traveling, but all my colleagues are doing that. So I travel mostly, of course, between two other member states, but also representing the EU in a global context. I was in G7 the other week with the G7 members to cooperate on circularity on water. So I travel a lot, but I also visiting. Having a lot of internal meeting with my cabinet, of course, to get the Circular Economy Act forward, and the chemical regulations and the water resilience and so forth. So, and then besides that, I read a lot. Well, I'm not, unfortunately, not the books that I necessarily want to read, but a lot of texts that I need, materials that I need to prepare for the next meetings.
Okay, interesting. So you're traveling a lot, so I assume, and as you have already stated, you're dealing a lot also with industry, with NGOs, and also member states, as we talked about already. I don't know if that's hard to answer, but who's hardest to satisfy from your perspective?
Oh, that is awesome. I mean, if I may take one example, I mean, as a politician, I think it's very hard to satisfy everybody, and that's, I mean, this little of the role. And in the 10th of December last year, we put forward an omnibus. The Commission is working now with simplification. We call them omnibuses. I don't like the word, but it is what it is. And now it's a lot of omnibuses out there. It's not a traffic jam, I just want to say that. They are still working. So we are, but anyway, I put forward my omnibus, environmental omnibus, and it was criticized from both NGOs, both from different political groups, all of them actually. Either was it too much or too little. So actually, I think that was a good, that I'm happy because this is a result. Exactly. I'm balanced in the, I don't know, middle. So I think that is when we put forward something that is not criticized, then I will be worried. So actually, I think a little bit the opposite. So I'm happy when people actually think things and say things about the things that we are presenting. A lot of think there. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I've never looked at it that way. It's very interesting. So, and when a new law is created, as we're getting a little bit more in the topic, what is your role from the first idea of the law to then its implementation?
So this is also, I mean, it's not like I am sitting at home and thinking fantastic new things on a Sunday evening and and I call my head of cabinet on Monday morning and say, listen, Paulina, I think I have an idea. Should we? Unfortunately not. It is something else that's coming up in a process, I would say, and then we work on things. I mean, the Circular Economy Act, we have talked about circularity and we have a strategy also. A lot of member states have strategies. So what do we see as a challenge to actually go? We have an ambition. How can we get there? And then, as I said, we also need legislation to actually reach our goals. And then the legislation is starting to grow in process. But if I may also ask, because sometimes people criticize me and the Commission for having a complex rule that is very bad for some reason. Then I also try to remind people that it's not the Commission by itself who's sitting in our chambers in Berlaymont and thinking thoughts. It's coming from somewhere. Someone has pointed, this is a challenge. We need to address that as a politician. So this is what we're trying to do, solve problem and so see that Europe is fit for future. So it is always a combination of different things. Then, of course, we have expertise on putting the text on the table. We do impact assessment, seeing that the legislation is not doing harm on one side, but also, I mean, so it's a very complex process, but that again have some challenges, but also some very many benefits.
Okay, so you already talked now also about environment, circular economy. Now, I'm talking about this also because you have a very long title. Yeah, Commissioner for Water Resilience, Environment, and a Competitive Circular Economy. And now that's something I would really like to talk to you with you about now. So in a globalized economy, as we have it here, what does a competitive circular economy look like for us here in Europe?
I think actually the word competitive circularity is important to remember, and I try to say that in my speech. We have talked about circularity for a long time, actually since you talked about how the waste hierarchy, when a waste is not a waste, since the 70s. But we in Europe are not circular. 12% rate, usually that figure, statistic we use. And that is not good enough. So when we looked at what is then the bottlenecks, I think one of the big bottlenecks is that we need to create a competitive circular economy. We need to create a business case. It's about how to create the market. And as I said, it also been looked as, of course we need to reduce our waste, but we also need to see the waste as a resource, not a waste. So that's, I think, the competitive, and the word competitive is for me important. Then I agree with you, I have a very long title, and actually everything is not mentioned in my title. I'm also responsible for Bauhaus. I have a lot of chemicals in my work, so it could be even longer. Or it could be only Commissioner for Waste, I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with that.
Okay, the Commissioner for Waste. No, interesting. Yeah, I mean, if we also think about competitive circular, can we also become maybe resilient by that? Because if we think about competitive, you have talked about batteries. If we can reuse batteries, parts of batteries in the keynote, how does it look like with resilience in those terms?
So a little bit on the former question. I mean, I think that we need to be circular for so many reasons. As I said, it started with environment, but also to tackle climate change. If we go circular, we know that we will decrease our emissions with at least 35%. Then it is about resilience. Batteries comes in that, of course, but also security. And also competitiveness. I believe that our industries in Europe are in forefront when it comes to circular models, and we need to stay in the lead. And batteries is a good example. I mean, we need batteries for our transformation of our societies. We all know why, and we all see that. Well, I don't have my phone with me now, or I don't have a car, but it's a bad example probably. But anyway, we need that. But for creating batteries, we need a lot of materials, and some of you study these things. So you know, I would not. Now I'm deep out in something that I don't manage to talk about so much, obviously. But how can we then be? How can we be? I mean, it's not only Europe who needs these battery components. US needs them, China needs them, India, South America, everybody needs them. So these critical raw materials that we are totally dependent on China for many of them, it's also getting weaponized in this global challenging area, geopolitical that we are into. So I believe that the circularity is an important piece to get more independent. But with that, they are also responsible for water, and the Water Framework Directive is also important for new mines or using the mines that we already have. So I have two legs actually when it comes to batteries or digitalization, or the rare earths or the critical raw materials. But absolutely, here again, I am happy to see a lot of innovation in Europe, both when it comes to recovery of some of the materials. I talked about lithium, but also other materials is here. So I think this is the future, and we are just in the beginning of this transformation.
That sounds very exciting. Now I actually want to quote you on something very interesting in my opinion. So last year, so very recently, at the Global Solutions Summit, you gave a very, very good example in my opinion. So you said you can get rich by taking fossil fuels out of the ground, but you will certainly not get rich by putting carbon back into the ground. This seems to be very reasonable, which makes the problem we are facing also easy to grasp. What needs to change so that either preserving or restoring nature becomes economically attractive?
No, that is a correct side, and I still agree with that one. It's different answer for different materials. But I think that we need to have this change of mindset, both me as a consumer, as a policymaker, but also going into the industries. All of us need to have this change of mindset, because today we, not business to business, not consumer to business, we are not yet willing to pay the extra price for circular products. And I don't think that I can change that with legislation alone, or not me, not you. So I think we need to create that demand, and I think that how can we do, and legislation is one part, working together with new ideas, innovation is important, but also I think incentives in other ways, and we of course looking into how can we use public procurement, how can we use taxes, how can we use, I mean, it's also the single market, of course. So I don't have one answer on that neither. I understand that all my answers now is more like sounding like a politician. But I am a politician, but it's not like, okay, this is the solution. I wish, but I don't see that it's not one solution.
But maybe that's also interesting to know that there is not the one solution, which maybe also keeps us striving to search for a solution, as we are just students here. Now, I would like to give now most of you opportunities to ask questions. We have still quite some time left. So if you have a question, please raise your hand now. Kara, with the microphone, will come to you, and then you will have the option to ask the question. Please keep it as short as possible. All right. I will give you the microphone.
Oh, yes.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? No? Muss ich anschalten?
Screen? No.
Stream.
Okay, just speak very loud.
Okay, it's a bit a critical question because in fact, on one hand, we have countries like China and other India who produce so much CO2 and produce high quality and cheap products and send it to us in the EU. And the producers here, they have to abide to quite strict CO2 rules and they cannot produce so cheaply. Don't you believe that we need more bolder steps from the side of the government? Because we cannot say, okay, the responsibility lies within the consumers who have to take more expensive products so that they can save the environment. I think that it is not the individual who needs to take the steps, it is the government, because one person can oversee the scale, and I think it is more your work, the work of the government to take these steps.
So the question was, you asked, you started to say it's a critical question that me as a policymaker should take, not put the responsibility for consumers and individuals, which we as government or commission should take the responsibility. And I agree, but I would also, I think that we all need to take responsibility to the change of the transformation when it comes to circularity, which I spoke about. Then on the what do you say with that word? The overflow of cheap products that we see coming to Europe every day. I think it's 12 million of parcels every day coming or something. That is, of course, a challenge and a problem that I see very well. I visited a recycling company before I came here, and of course they see a problem when it comes to fires, for example. I see it, we see it a lot of products not following the rules, as I say, when it comes to putting chemicals in this problem. But I would say, argue that, and that we need to tackle on many different layers. Both we need to have surveillance on what is coming into Europe. We have now put forward a proposal when it comes to small cheap packages, a fee on every package. That is one step. We are working on the platform because a lot of things that are coming into Europe is also put on these platforms. How can we use them? But of course, because you're right, so we need to defend our own industry with we should not go backtracking to lower our higher environmental standards. So we need to do that. So I would actually say that we are addressing exactly that, both with a lot of different tools. But with that said, I still believe that we also need to do this transformation together with, of course, the industry. But with also I think that I also have a responsibility as a consumer. Then, of course, as a commissioner, I have a huge responsibility to see that we have a safe environment and protecting people's health here.
Thank you for your speech. I think I have a rather simple question. So far, EU is kind of losing economically to China and the US. When do you think that circularity and sustainability will become our kind of defining edge?
When will the environment, the green and clean industry be a competitive advantage? I say this over and over again because you know that the political environment that I live in today is not always that simple, it's not always easy. But I have been repeating, saying that I don't see a contradiction between the green transition and the competitiveness. I think that when I read Mr. Draghi's report 3 years ago, that was exactly what he pointed out, that this can be the competitive advantage for Europe if we stay the course, but also, of course, need to do simplification on the regulations that are burdensome. So when, I don't know, I think that we in some areas already see that, but we also, if I go back to the circularity and the example of plastic recycling, unfortunately that industry today is at crisis, which is not good for our businesses, is neither good for our environment and the circularity. So I think, I wish I had a better answer to you, say that this will happen tomorrow. But I am certain that the only way forward is to continue to do the green and clean transition, because that will be the advantage that we have in Europe.
Thank you for your talk. You talked a lot about circularity, and I wanted to ask if reduced consumption is also part of your position, and if so, what are incentives and regulations that you integrate into your position to reduce the consumption of resources overall, because I would argue that that is even more important than circularity.
So how can we reduce consumption was the question. I mean, for me, it is circularity as such, and I said it in my speech also, will reduce waste, which is the other side of what you're saying, I would argue. So, and again, back to us, we all have a responsibility here, and I think that we are in this transition going to be more circular on all the levels. So we are working with a lot of different R's when it comes to circular economy. So we, of course, reuse, remanufacture, and recycle, maybe the last one, and then waste we will try to avoid. But I think that maybe I should not say hope, but I mean, in this, we are now in a crisis on crisis on crisis, conflict and war and trade wars. And the time now is showing that the products and everything is getting so very expensive, and of course of the cost of the planet is showing that we really need to do the change now. And I think that the latest crisis and war we are seeing now in Iran also shows the urgency of doing that change. But of course, as I said, maybe I moved too fast on that, because the circular economy for me is the environment and climate. And environment, what I mean with that is the extraction of materials that we do. We take too much out of the planet for the moment, and that is not sustainable. And we have talked about that for a long time. What I think is new, if I may say so, is that we link it to security and that we are dependent. And I think the link to that is getting more obviously every day. So that is why I'm trying to also say that, connecting the dots. But all the R's are still important.
Thank you.
So I would have a quick follow-up question to the first question that was asked by the audience, namely regarding the import of products that were built without regard to EU environmental regulations. So they are more competitive partly because simply that, while European producers would have to follow these rules, and for that reason, among others, are more expensive. I think there is an answer partly given by the EU, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which comes into force this year, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if I understand correctly, imported goods must pay the carbon tax that local producers would bear in order to make the playing field more level. And that is, I think, to some extent, an answer to your question, regarding carbon at least. Did I get that correctly?
Yes, CBAM we call it, and that of course is one of the important tools that we have to protect our market, but also do our part, share our responsibility when it comes to the emissions. Because that is the reason why we have set this rule for our industries when it comes to emissions. We have the carbon pricing and all this, but of course it's true. But to be honest, also there is a current discussion on the CBAM, but also on the ETS. And I from the Commission side, is very stubborn, saying that this is the tools that we have to do this decarbonization of the European Union that we really need to do, not only due to the climate change, because of course that is the reason, but also due to the dependencies that we are facing today.
Questions?
Hello, thank you for sharing your experience. So my question is a little bit different from what everybody brought. So we talked a lot about resources that provide ecosystem services. What about the natural resources that are critical but are of no use to human? Is that ever a topic of discussion? For example, when mining something, the critical habitat loss is there. So for me, it sounds a little bit like we have new terms but then the extraction mentality is still there. So, yeah.
I mean, we have no, but it's always, we need to do a balance when we, as me as a politician, I need to have a balance and think of all the different things that we need to achieve. If we want to do the clean transition, if we want to do the digitalization, if also we need to protect ourselves, we need to focus on security, then we need to also take our own responsibility. And when it comes, for example, when it comes to mining, which I understand is the question, no.
Like, what about the resources that are critical but do not provide ecosystem services to humans? Are they still ever a part of discussion when they are being like byproduct of our use? You know, like they suffer from our use, but they're not really providing any ecosystem services. Does that make sense?
So could you give me an example of what resource you mean, like?
For example, some critical animal species that are endangered because of our use of something, but they are not really, those endangered species are not really providing any ecosystem use, like any services to humans.
I mean, we have a lot of regulation. We have the Habitat Directive, for example, which protects a lot of species. And in my portfolio, they are very often, I said I could have a longer title also. I mean, so absolutely, they are very much in my discussions. And when we can't talk about biodiversity loss, of course, we talk of a lot of different species species, both animals and växter. What do you say, växter in Swedish? You don't know, because nobody speaks Swedish, but anyway. Yes. Yes. Plants, thank you. Thank you. Well, some Scandinavian. Now, of course, they are in our discussions. And so when we put on new regulation, of course, we need to take into account the Habitat Directive. So the nature directives that we have had since the 90s in Europe, which we should share, well, not sure, that there are one of it's like our values. So that's maybe I didn't understand the question in the beginning. One thing that I may add on that question is because I go on all these missions, I have a lot of discussions on circularity, which is the focus now, but I also have a lot of discussions on nature as such, if I may take it a little bit broader. And here I can also say that, of course, all governments around Europe is under under pressure, and sometimes argue that it is very difficult to also add money to invest in nature, or it's a cost. And my view is that it's not a cost, it's an investment. If we don't invest in nature, that will have a cost in the future. And my example that I did in the speech, that 3 out of 4 businesses in Europe are heavily dependent on at least one ecosystem. That means it's not that we can take only one, we have to take both the environment or nature and the competitiveness. So I mean, for me, or the economic security, call it whatever you like. So this is very much present in all our discussions. But sometimes it's good that you raise the question. It's also, especially today, I would argue that it is an example on why we need to invest in nature. Going back to UK and Brexit maybe, one of the reports I use very often is from the UK government. They published it just after New Year this year, saying that the biodiversity loss is one of the biggest threats for security in UK. And I would say that it's the same in Europe, in all our member states. So it's definitely on the agenda.
Okay, I think, can I?
Oh, sorry. I stole it now.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think we have no time for any more questions. However, thank you for everyone who asked a question. And now we have one concluding question for you. So until now, we have discussed many different topics and also approaches to create a more sustainable environment. But maybe what is a small thing that we all as students or individuals can do to support a circular economy?
Well, I would be bold and creative and search for innovation also for the future. Since I hear, but then I'm sorry to go back to the individuals, because I think that we all have a part of this, because business models is of course created out of individuals. So that is one thing. But then see also, since it is Europe Week, I also want to say that the challenges that we face also demands joint answers, and Europe is the best place also to create these answers.
Thank you so much. I think that fits this theme of the EU Week very well. We are now, that's a little bit hard with all the microphones, we are now coming to the end of this event. Commissioner Roswall, thank you so much for being here today. Yes.
Thank you.
You have given us very valuable insights, in my opinion. And lastly, I want to thank the TUM School of Management as organizer of the EU Week here at TUM, and my team, the TUM Speaker Series, for making this event possible. We're glad to have had you all here today, and I have been told there is a QR code. First, if you want to follow us, you can do that right now. And there will be also a QR code providing you the program for the EU Week. With that, I hope you all will have an enjoyable afternoon, and I hope to see you at one of our next events. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dankeschön.